I'm so happy to be with you today. For those of you that don't know, We Work Well is a hosted buyer event and brings wellness into every aspect of the event experience, different from some others. We have custom-built software that we use to connect sellers and buyers from high-volume luxury spas through scheduled one-on-one meetings, education, and networking such as this. This event is the middle of one of our virtual meetings. I think it's our fifth this year, year since we started them last fall, since we learned about pandemics. We began in 2019 with live events and obviously had to pivot, but it has worked out well. We have hosted at this point 1,500 of these one-on-one meetings. So kudos to the platform and to Lucy and Monica, because 1,500 meetings that would not have happened otherwise. So here we are for a break in the day, and we always have an educational topic to give us food for thought. I mean, it's important that buyers and sellers connect and meet, of course, but what else is coming down the line in the world of spa and wellness? And of course, February is the month of love. And so we thought, okay, I think we should have a love topic. But love and work are not things that generally go together. You know, we haven't always thought of them that way. I want to read you a quote from an article in HBR, Harvard Business Review from 2017, by an author named Duncan Coombs. He wrote that Tolstoy asserted that one can live magnificently in the world if one knows how to work and how to love. And Freud said, love and work and love, that's all there is, love and work. So Duncan Coombs points out that Tolstoy and Freud suggest that we need to do both love and work. And the fact is we need to do them at the same time. And that's not always easy. But when it comes to the topic of love and work, we could think of no one better to accompany us on this journey than Mia Kyricos, who will join us in a moment. I probably don't need to introduce Mia to most of you. She is currently the CEO and president of Kyricos Associates. She's holed up in Maine, but busy as ever. Her most recent post was a global leader of spa and well-being for Hyatt, for the brand, for Hyatt. She was the senior vice president. She was brand manager at Spa Finder. She was the VP at Exos, and she was a global spa brand management director at Starwood for many years. So she's been in our industry forever. Mia sort of introduced this concept of love and work last summer when she gave her amazing wellness masterclass on the Global Wellness Institute's platform. So if you haven't caught that, you might want to look it up. It's still available. But here today, especially to join us and give us a personal vision of how love will incorporate into the workplace today, let me introduce Mia.
Hi, everybody. Nice to see you for those that can see me. And I see a lot of familiar faces. I see Frank, I see Karen, I see a bunch of I see Blake and others. So sorry if you're not on the same mode. Lisa, thank you so much for that lovely introduction. And thanks to the We Work Well team for this awesome gator that I just thought, you know, matched my outfit well. So I should use this. But I'm so excited to present with you guys today. I'm going to show slides here in a minute. But this topic is near and dear to my heart. Really, what you all are going to get is the best of last year and the best of my leaderships for 2021. I love this industry. I love this organization. I love so many of you that are on the phone. That I put together something that I'm only giving to We Work Well because I really respect the organization and the work that you guys all do. So Lisa, thank you so much. I'm going to share my screen. Bring up my presentation, if that works. Can you hear me okay? I'm just double checking.
Yep, we can hear you fine.
Right. Great. Here we go. All right, now we'll put this in presentation mode. Great, and everyone can see my screen?
Yep. Yes.
Okay, good. So as I mentioned, last year I went on this quest of love as a business strategy, and I really wanted to study the business impact of love, kind of like what I've done for wellness and well-being. I needed like the science and the evidence and the business around it to actually believe that it could work in lots of different environments. And love, actually, I went on the same quest, and I'm happy to say the results are just as positive. But also at the start of this year, I talked about 10 tips to lead well in 2021 that's really based on work that I've done with public and private entities, not just the commercial side of spa, wellness, and well-being, but really helping to make colleagues and companies well. And so I've merged both to give you the best of that over the next 20 minutes. And Lisa, just keep me honest on time.
Sure.
So if that works. So I think the first question, which is what I would ask, and I'd expect all of you to ask, is why the heck should you care what I think? And really, it comes down to the fact that we have a lot in common, that regardless of the companies I've worked for, which Lisa highlighted, the kinds of clients I've had, here are a few examples, or even some of the organizations I've helped to build over the course of the last 20 years. It's all been linked by this playground that we all work in, which is really the $4.5 trillion wellness economy. And my job today is really strategically advising the wellness strategies of hospitality, tourism, healthy lifestyle companies. And really that's the what. But I will tell you, 2021 is now about the how we work. It's less about the products and services or the organizations that we lead. It's going to be much more about how we show up and work in life. And that's really what led me to put this chart aside and focus on tips to lead well in 2021. And so I'm going to cover 10 tips for you. I'm just going to talk them through. When I get to leading with love, which is a key tip, we're going to take a little segue and I'm just going to give you the highlights from that research. And then we'll close it all out. And then Lisa and I will have a conversation. And we even prepared a little exercise for you together to really think about what this means to you both at work and in life. So we're going to jump in with these 10 tips and starting with the first one, which I call the stop. So this actually was born out of the fact that I got a call from a chief HR officer of a Fortune 500 company who is a friend of mine. And she was just at her wit's end at the end of last year, having let go about 25 to 30% of their global and corporate resources, really thinking about the mental health of colleagues that were now thrust to work at home, often in spaces that weren't designed for work. And she was just really freaking out. She asked me, she said, I saw that you created this partnership with Headspace for Hyatt. You know, what can we do? What tool, what app, what resource, what program should I be bringing to life to care for people's well-being? And I said, oh, there's tons of programs out there and I can talk to you about some, but the reality is the single thing that you could do that's not going to cost you money, but it's going to be hard to execute, is to facilitate a conversation around the stop list. That is, what are you all going to stop doing to allow room and space for what's truly impactful to you and your business? Because you just told me you shrunk your resources by 30%. Has your workload been cut down by 30%? And the best leaders of 2021 are going to take that uncomfortable effort to sit down and make a list of what they're doing and figure out what's not as impactful anymore or not as important, so that they can not let the urgent things get in the way of what's important. And the best leaders are going to publish those results and facilitate an exercise with all of their people. It doesn't have to be overly formal. Get a whiteboard out, do it virtually, and start determining what you're not going to do to leave more room for what's really impactful to your business. So the stop list is my tip number one. The second tip I have is understanding the role that fear and trust play in your organization today. And I will tell you, this is not easy. This is just as hard as looking in the mirror and deciding, wow, I put on a little weight around the pandemic. I got to get after it. You know, understanding the role that fear and trust play, because leaders, when they foster fearful organizations where you're fearful for your job, if you're fearful about your performance, if you're fearful about getting it wrong or saying a stupid thing in a meeting, that's where ego leads from, is fear. Love can lead from a place, but it has to be trust. You need to be trusted by your colleagues, by your employees, by your community members. And so you really have to understand the role that fear and trust play. And the best organizations out there will probably get help from a third party just to put a survey together and help figure that out and ask questions anonymously of people, because we've all been there. We know what it's like to be afraid of a boss. We know what it's like to feel like our colleagues don't trust us, or in turn, we don't trust someone, or we fear a boss or whatever. So it's really important that you understand that, because think of trust as the foundation of a house. Without trust, love can't grow, and fear takes the whole house off the table. So that's something to really think about. My leadership tip for 2021, number 3, is my favorite. And I picked 3 just because I love that number. It's a lucky number. And that's to lead with love. And that's why this whole conversation is about leading well with love in 2021, because I think this is probably the most important tip of the 10 that I'm going to cover. And Lisa mentioned a lot of research that I did last year. So I'm just going to segue real quick. And instead of boring you with 2 months of research and a presentation and all that jazz that went along with the work that I did, I'm going to just give you the highlights in the next 3 or 4 slides about leading with love. Last year, my wellness tip, so that everyone knows, as I was going through a lot of transition, really having to evolve and change and eventually leave an organization that I loved with the team that I loved, and everything that we've all gone through in a variety of ways, I decided to employ one of my wellness practices, which is anytime I'm going through something difficult, I need to find something new to learn or some beacon of light to pull me out. And I keep a list of projects that I'd like to do that I never get to do, like cleaning out closets, and researching if love could be employed as a business strategy was one that I wanted to finally ask. And so as it turns out, I asked this question. I went on a research quest of about 2 months. I talked to companies and people all around the globe. And the bottom line is love has a lot to do with it. And it really inspired me to share. And I walked away really rewarded by this research, but this was my starting point. My starting point was that we all know this mentality. I call it the Wall Street mentality, that most business leaders have a disinclination to embrace love as a business strategy because they're conditioned to believing that leadership is about being cutthroat, aggressive, and mean. Now, I think our industry rises above this more often than not. We're ahead of the game because we really contemplate people's humanity. But the reality is, in corporate Americas and corporations around the world, this mentality still very much exists. And there's a lot of leaders out there that have started to critique it. And so I went and I started looking at companies and organizations. And these were the 5 lessons of that research that have really inspired me to make leading with love a key tip for 2021. The first tip is this: some companies have already made love a strategic business priority, and it's paying off. I went and looked at a bunch of companies. I'll just give you 2 to plant the seed. Subaru. A lot of you guys might drive Subarus. You're aware of the fact that Subaru, like a lot of companies, has marketed love. You know, their tagline is love. It's what makes Subaru a Subaru. But when I dug into it, I learned that they have a love promise and a whole philosophy about how they show up in their communities and how they treat each other and their customers and their colleagues and their inclusion and diversity practices. And the list continues. And when you look at the performance of Subaru, it's best in class globally. It's #1 in its segment of automobiles in the world. The same would be true for Southwest Airlines. Now, if you think of Southwest, they actually have a heart as their mark. They painted on the underbelly of their planes. They took their first flight from Love Field in Dallas. They used to have Love Bites, which they can't call them that anymore. They have Love Snacks on their planes. That was like their peanut snacks. And get this, I went back all the way back to, I think it was 1993, where part of their communication and their new hire orientation was that they embraced love in the workplace, which means it's the best compliment to them in their workplace if you get your spouses, your girlfriends, your boyfriends to actually work at the same company. And they celebrate the amount of customers that they have, employees that they have that are married. I mean, that's just an example of how they've been folding in love as a business strategy. There's many more, but I'm just here to tell you that one of my lessons was that a lot of companies have already been doing this. The second thing we talked about in one of my leadership tips, which is the role of trust in an organization. And if you really want to dig into this, write this down. Brené Brown wrote the book Dare to Lead. And in that, she has the anatomy of trust that is much more complicated than you can imagine, but it helped me to understand a lot of personal relationships and professional relationships with which I've struggled. And it can really help you to assess trust in your workplace. So I'll just throw that out there as an example. Think of it again as that foundation of the house. The third lesson I learned from this research is that we already have the ability to track and analyze and measure the impact of love. Think about it today. I mean, loyalty programs. I mean, I can't think of a better example of love. Those are your customers that love you and are with you all the time, right? You think about low churn rates. You think about upsell opportunities. There's so many traditional business measures that when you look at it, really talk about how a constituent loves you or doesn't love you by contrast. And I think one of the lessons I learned in this research is one of the most underutilized measures of love is employee love. I mean, think about the last time you asked your employees what they love about working for you. What about the last time you were asked what you love about working for your company? What about your board members, your community members, your suppliers, your partners? What do they love? And if they trust you enough, are you comfortable asking them what don't they love? These are things that you can measure today, is my point. And it's something that you can be tracking. You can start small. I don't recommend going to the boardroom and putting hearts everywhere like I have and tell everyone it's all about love. But there are things you can look at today, measures you're using to measure your business and start seeing, how love is making impact as a business strategy for you, or if it could. Fourth, positivity can be serious business and love is its greatest form. Another book, and I've never been on a big self-help book person, I have to tell you, but this research led me to this. There's a book by Barbara Fredrickson called Positivity. She talks all about the science and evidence about it, the 10 different forms of positivity. But what I'm here to tell you is love is its greatest form. Unlike hope and gratitude and awe and other things that are forms of positivity, love is the superpower. It can actually encapsulate all the others at once. And she talks about different businesses and examples of how people show up in life and have a positive mentality. It's an amazing book. But it led me to this case study on Prudential Real Estate. And Prudential went and they were going to acquire another company. And before they did, this was back in like 2003, they took their entire management company through a positivity management course, officially changed their business practices, things like starting meetings off only with what's going well, making sure they show gratitude, that they help to manage to people's strengths, not their weaknesses, because weaknesses are always weaknesses. Amazing experience. And bottom line is they took their company management team through it. They went to acquire another company that was running a $20 million deficit. They acquired that other company, trained them all on positivity management, and within 2 years, turned around a $70 million profit through their acquisition. So I am just giving this as one example. I know I'm throwing a lot at you, but it's just an example that positivity does pay. It can be a serious business and love is its greatest form. So again, that was inspiring. And then number 5, you can care for those you do not love, but if you love to care, it stands to be exponential. And really think about the best restaurant experience you've ever had. God willing, we all get back into restaurants. But you've gone in, you bought a salad and no one asked you how you are. And then there's this neighborhood place that you bring your family and they know that your kid likes the Shirley Temple and they know how you like your steak cooked and they bring you a surprise dessert that you weren't expecting. They love you. And they really have pioneered what I call the new ROI, which is reciprocity on investment, which is, I learned this from this gentleman by the name of Steve Farber. And he just said, when you do what you love in the service of others, it stands to pay you back tenfold. And so we don't have to love the people we work with, but if we love working with them, it can be an amazing experience. So these are my 5 lessons of love. You can read more about love on LinkedIn, but you'll see why I'm so excited and why I made it a tip for 2021. And if you're looking at this and you're like, I don't get it, it sounds too abstract, Mia, you're giving me too much information, help me out. I'm going to give you this one thing to do. The next time you're freaking out about how your company is performing, or your spouse pissed you off, or you have a colleague that's struggling, or you're trying to decide whether you're going to stop offering an SKU, or if you're going to stop a product or service, and you get into the spin where your heart's racing and you start to sweat and you start having feelings that you don't really understand because you're in the moment of panic, simply ask yourself, what would love do? And it will literally get you to stop with the spin and just start to think more humanely about that business problem at hand. I've done this. I cannot tell you how much this works because it really engages. There's a whole science behind it. It engages the part of your brain that doesn't freak out and doesn't have fight or flight, and really helps you to think rationally through this. So back to this list. My whole point on this is that leading with love, I think, is just so important to leading well in 2021. And there's a science behind it, and we need more companies to be doing it and really employing love as a business strategy. Which brings me to number 4, tip number 4 for 2021, and that's whole selves. How many of you all have seen things you cannot unsee in 2020 and 2021? How many of you have gone into your office, you're trying to conduct meetings as you used to do in the conference room that you booked, and the dog's going by, the kids are screaming because they're being homeschooled, the wireless, gave out right when you were giving like a particular pitch or delivering this like amazing presentation, all of these things that we've seen that we used to like check at the door when we got to the office. We would hang up our coats and hats, and we wouldn't feel comfortable sharing who we were, the successes or failures on things that are not said on our business cards, that we're mom, we're dad, we're caretaker, we're community members. I actually think it's a good thing. It's forced our whole selves for the world to see in front of each other on Zoom more than not. And I don't think we can unsee that and go back to just business as usual. I think we need to think of ourselves as whole human beings that have many more parts than just the work we do on a day-to-day basis. And we need to acknowledge that in our everyday work. And so invite whole selves to work. And that's a tip for 2021. Number 5 is wellness culture. And I will say with the fun I've had working with chief HR officers and also on the campuses of Google and Intel and State Street Bank and others that I had the good fortune to work with when I was leading the workplace wellness division at Exos. One of the things that kept coming up, even including with work at Hyatt, is everyone wants their wellness program. What's the program we're going to offer in our workplace? Are we going to give gym memberships? Are we going to give discounts on apps? Are we going to offer healthy food in the cafeteria? What are the things that we are going to do? What's the program we're going to offer so we can check the box and move on? The reality is, if you offer that, but you're living in a place that has too much work for us to see through, you're living in a workplace that's fearful, you're not inviting whole selves to work, you are chained to your desk 24/7, you don't feel like you can take a break and take advantage of the gym that might be offered in site or whatever. Companies are just lighting bags of money on fire and throwing it out the window to check that box to say, we have a workplace wellness program. For us to be well at work, we need to look at this much more culturally, not programmatically. The programmatics are necessary, they're ingredients, but you need the whole pot to cook the soup. And that's why I say look at wellness as culture, not programs in the workplace. Number 6, respect boundaries. And the best way to respect boundaries is actually to claim your own. Is it that you need to work out in the middle of the day? Is it that you need to take a moment to meditate between the end of your workday and going home to be with your families and loved ones? Is it that when you go on holiday, you are literally on holiday unless the building's burning, the house is burning, or someone's bleeding from a main artery? Whatever it is, respecting boundaries and modeling how you respect boundaries is really important to drive that well culture at work, and understanding what helps make people tick in work and life. So the respecting boundaries for us to lead well in 2021 is really important, and understanding them, taking the time to know what they are, what helps your colleagues and peers flourish, and where they need you to respect their limitations of life or their desires to be the best well leader they can be at work is very important. Number 7, mental health. I think the Global Wellness Institute did a great job of releasing this amazing research about the mental health and wellness economy at the beginning of the year. I think it's the number one topic that we're all talking about, but we've not been comfortable talking about at work. That mental health isn't just about the clinically diagnosed individuals that are going through clinical disorders that they're managing with a health practitioner. It's also people that are going through bereavement, through divorce, through a pandemic, you name it, that have periods of time where they feel mentally unwell. And so we need to destigmatize this category that we just say we only deal with mental health in the workplace when it's one of those categorized definitions that like our health insurance is here for. We need to really make it more comfortable to talk about mental health and wellness in the workplace, just as we would cancer, just as we would other things that come to life that we're all living with day to day. Number 8 is sort of a diversion from the flavor of the others, and this is about making travel special again. And as someone who was born in the hospitality industry, and many of you I know service people who travel, this is sort of has meanings for different people. As consumers, we're making travel special again whenever the heck we can travel again. And can we do so in the future? We'll probably be taking less trips. But we'll be cherishing the ones we get to take, whether alone, with loved ones, with families, or as part of business. And when you think about a year ago, we were spinning out of control with how many times we'd hit the road, and sometimes we would without really any thought as to whether or not it was necessary. We have an opportunity to make travel special again, not just as consumers, but as business leaders who are approving trips. Maybe you'll take less trips, but maybe you'll go longer when you do, and they'll be more meaningful. And for brands, travel brands that are out there, they have the chance to actually earn that first impression again. They say you can never get a second chance to earn a first impression. You can now, because consumers that are coming to travel brands to try their products or services or stay at their hotel again, if they feel confident that you've taken the cleanliness and the hygiene standards really seriously, you're re-earning their loyalty for life. And so I think we have a real opportunity as an industry to make travel special again, make it important, and really be much more conscious about how we consume travel moving forward. Number 9 is to prioritize purpose over profit. This isn't just because it feels good and it's the more humane thing to do, but your companies and you as leaders need to have a raison d'etre, have a reason why you get up in the morning and why you do the work that you do, and same for your companies. And it's not just because, as I mentioned, it feels good, it does good. Your companies perform better when you exist for a reason other than just dollars and cents. And if that's not clear to you today, figuring out what else you stand for to make the world a happier, a better, a more productive, more humane place, whatever it ends up being, make sure you know what that purpose is, because that purpose can actually lead to new partnerships, new ways of doing business that you might not be thinking broadly enough about. You might be thinking too narrowly about it because you're focused on the bottom line or the top line and not necessarily what the purpose is for why you exist and do the work that you do. So that's a really key area. And then number 10, it takes a little bit of a serious note, WID mindset, and that really stands for well-being, inclusion, and diversity mindset. I will tell you one of the hardest lessons I learned in 2020 happened when I witnessed the tragic end to George Floyd's life. And the coming weeks that followed, I saw these things on LinkedIn and companies that were scrambling to hire new IND or DNI leaders thinking that they needed a leader there to fill the void versus thinking about the mindset of what it means to be inclusive and diverse. And if you look at the science, those leaders that are out there that are more inclusive, are more humane, they actually lead much more well lives, companies, organizations, and families. They, by and large, are healthier, and there's research out there that PricewaterhouseCoopers did. They're much healthier, and they lead wellness in their lives and for their companies. And so, operating with a WID mindset is that if you have the privilege to be able to have team members with wellness, well-being, inclusion, and diversity in your organization, then you need to bring them all together, because they are they're wonderful, logical, if not essential teammates to really partner up together. And of course, if you're like many companies that don't have the ability or budget to have that, those official positions on your staff, know that it's all part of a whole, that leading well, being inclusive, diversifying your portfolio, diversifying who you work with, really being the kind of leader that we need in 2021, it all goes hand in hand. And this is my list for leading well in 2021, the top 10 list. And I think we all have the power to lead well with love. And I'm not the first, and I certainly won't be the last. I think we all do. So I'm ending with one of my favorite quotes in the world with Martin Luther King. So I'm gonna thank you now, and I'm gonna stop this, and I'm here for questions.
Thank you so much, Mia. That was amazing, of course. So much to think about. We do have a few minutes for questions before we get into an exercise. So if you have one for Mia, you could put it into the chat. My question that I'm going to ask you is on the trust issue. I mean, if you have an absence of trust in the workplace, you know, we're talking about loving in a context that we may not have embraced in work. And will people be distrustful of us if we come back to work in the workplace and we're all like nice and more empathic than we used to be? I mean, how do we ease back into this?
I think you have to start small. I think there's a couple things. When I think about just the trust piece, independent of love as a business strategy, because I think of this as a precursor, you literally can design an easy survey, 3, 4, 5 questions, and do it with an organizational behavior, an HR leader or someone, and just state the problem statement. Listen, we want to see how trusted we are as an organization. Can you help us design a tool, make it anonymous, and look at it by level? You know, there's so many different ways you can slice and dice that, but really understanding how you're trusted. And I would look at your entire ecosystem, not just your employees, maybe your community members, board members, customers. Decide. It doesn't have, you can start small, but understanding sort of what role trust plays in your organization, and if you're trusted, is really important. And then when it comes to implementing love as a business strategy, I don't think you can boil the ocean with it and hit everything. Think about the constituent that you're struggling with the most. And, you know, employees are a good example, is really understanding what they love. And a lot of this is just surveying and making sure you're understanding who you're involved with. It could be looking at the plus side. If I'm employing positivity, it could be, why is a loyalty program so successful? Have you ever talked to your members about why they love being part of Starwood Preferred Guest or Marriott Bonvoy or whatever it ends up being? You know, those are the things that you need to like dig into, because those are the things you want to not just understand, but like bottle and replicate and multiply. So you can either start from where you think you have challenges, or start for what's going well and try to bring that in the workplace.
Great, thank you. We have a brief question. Carmen, Dare to Lead by was Brene Brown. There was another book you mentioned, Mia.
Yes. Okay, so I'm going to give you 3 books, guys. And let me tell you, I am not the self-help girl, but I have to tell you, these books have all changed my life. Positivity by Barbara Fredrickson. And it's just gonna, I mean, just on how to be positive as a human being, but she spent so much, like 25 years in a lab looking at this. And there's actually a place that you can take a positivity ratio to see how you are. Bottom line, Positivity by Barbara Fredrickson. The second one is Dare to Lead by Brené Brown. And I think if you're really wondering about that trust question, she has a whole chapter about the anatomy of trust. Mind blowing. I would check that out. And the third one, which this was amazing, just in researching love as a business strategy, I ended up running into this guy, Steve Farber, who actually wrote a book, Love is Just Damn Good Business. And I had no idea. I found him and we connected, and he has a podcast, and it's just kismet. He talks about love as a business strategy as well, from a different point of view, but also, well, I would put it in that order: positivity, dare to lead, and love is just damn good business.
Okay, great. Before I let you go, Frank had a question. Thank you, Frank, for that. Frank Pizzicalis from Resort Suite, about the travel, the travel tip, and how do we unpack that, making travel special?
Yeah.
What should we do?
Frank, my Greek brother from another mother, I love you. Sagapo, actually, I love you in Greek. So that's a tricky one. I think the reality is that tip was born out of the reality of where we are with travel today. I think it's important to think of two things. If you have customers who are travel partners, which Frank, I know you do, and there are others, I would talk with them about how to support making travel special again. Are there certain things that they can do? Maybe changing guest rituals of yesterday, or amenities. Maybe there's a new way to establish trust with them, particularly since people are really trepid going back out there to travel again. They're nervous about staying well and healthy. And so what are things we can do to help them make that best first impression all over again? I think with our own teams, I think it's important for us to think about, because travel can be disruptive, can be positive to our business, but also disruptive to clients you're going to visit or whatever. I think just evaluating how important that particular trip is. And it's both from a cost saving measures, but also a productivity standpoint. I think we absolutely need to travel and do business via travel, but maybe just not as frequently as we did before. Maybe it's not every week, maybe it's once a month. To just make sure we're evaluating if that work can take place in person or via video, and finding a more healthful combination of the two, both for our businesses and for us as humans. So
great advice. So it sounds like, Mia, these 10 tips are connected, of course, and we have this challenge in front of us, and that some of us are still being a little virtual. Some of us are going back to the office, and we're easing back in, but we have to keep that number 9 or 8 tip of yours, priority and purpose over profit. And yet we have to make money, right? And we have to respect the wellness culture. We have to respect the boundaries. We have to create trust. These are not easy things for us to do. It's not like we can just snap our fingers and do it. Now, most of us we're not a bunch of accountants, right? Nothing against the accountants of the world, but we know we all have love. We all hug when we meet. And I think when we get back to the office, which I can't wait for, we'll be embracing each other more than ever, because we really appreciated it. But we need to keep in mind that when we go back to work, it's going to be different, right? We can't be sliding back into that old way. So do you have a tip for us of how to keep forward and not looking in the rearview mirror?
I do. And I will tell you, I have to do an exercise like this every year. And that's really about getting honest with the person in the mirror. And I think it's a good segue to the exercise we're going to do. I walk myself through 4 questions, and the answers change year after year, depending on what's going on. I think if I had a final tip on how to leverage the 10 tips I've given you, it's going to sound so cheesy, and it's what we already know, but it's hard for us to do. And that is to take a moment to breathe and to be mindful of what we're doing, because the spin is something that starts becoming self-propelling, like that mouse on the wheel, and you start doing things and saying things and you don't really know why or remember why. You're not really thinking with intention. And we all know the science and the business of wellness and well-being, but really taking a moment to slow down and be like, okay, even though I went from a Zoom call at 2 to 2:30 to 3, I'm here with Lisa and the entire We Work Well team, and I need to make sure I get these key messages across. Literally taking a moment to go through that is really important. Just to take a moment, be mindful, and to avoid the spin. And the exercise that we're about to do will help you, I think, do just that.
It's being present to the moment. What I hear you saying, like we always should be, but we get so caught up and we forget. Just be Buddha, right? Be here in this moment. Well, we've mentioned a few times that we have an exercise, and we're going to, in the absence of a real water cooler, break you up into some small groups to debate some questions that Mia has prepared for us. I'm going to share my screen now and show you what that is. I would suggest, oh, go ahead.
Actually, Lisa, you know what? That's the worksheet. I have just a few slides to cover on the questions.
Oh,
and then,
great. Go ahead.
If this works for you, Lisa, I know we're thinking this organically. I'll have everyone individually grab a notebook, grab a pen, because this is all going to be about you. I'm going to go through 4 slides of thought starters.
Okay.
And then, Lisa, I'll reference the worksheet as my final slide, and you can go into groups to do that.
Okay. Thank you. Everybody grab your pens.
So I'm going to share my screen again. Here we go. Okay. And we're going to go to the next slide as soon as I'm able to do that. Let's see. Okay. I start this with a quote from my favorite philosopher, my father, who says, check yourself before you wreck yourself. Like, he literally, as kids, this is what he told us. And I always giggle because it's no wonder I got into the field of wellness and well-being. But he's literally like, check yourself before you wreck yourself. And this is about me telling you, forget the tips, forget everything you just heard for a hot second, and just realize that your well-being comes first. And we get so caught up in the latest YouTube exercise or mindful book that we don't do the basics. And so these are the basics. I'm going to have you walk through 4 questions, and I just want you to take notes of things that come to mind for you exclusively. Okay, is everyone ready?
Yep.
Okay. So the first question is this: how do you show up best for yourself? Now, everyone knows that by the end of the day, it takes a life of its own. But we know what our perfect morning is. You know, that gets our day off started on the right foot. So think about what your perfect morning is. Is it exercise? Is it like, do you have to wake up on time to get your workout in? Do you need to meditate? Do you need to journal, get out things that are bothering you? Do you need access to nature? Like, do you need to take a walk around the block, take the dog out? Eat well and stay hydrated. You know, is it sleep? Is it spending time with loved ones? Whatever it ends up being, think about how you show up best for yourself, your perfect morning. And just take a few moments to jot that down. You know, how do you show up best for yourself? And it could be the start of the day, or it could be throughout the day. How do you best care for yourself to show up best for others? And so just think about that for a little bit. You know what works well for you. At least it could be like the perfect cup of morning Java. I know actually for you, it's doing twists and turns with Peloton yoga.
Totally.
You know, I know that. For me, it's I have to meditate as soon as I roll out of bed in the morning for 20 minutes just to put my mind back into my body. You know, I have a perfect morning ritual, but just think about what that is for you. So that's question 1. The second question I'm going to ask you is, once you know how you show up best for yourself, the second question is, how do you show up best for your loved ones? Is it playing with your kids, making sure you're taking time to do that? Is it spending quality time with your significant other? Like, is it having breakfast or your first cup of coffee with someone you're sharing your life with? Is it taking time, scheduling time, which sometimes we need to do to connect with our friends, to have a virtual happy hour or whatever it is that, you know, does just as much for you as it does for them? Is it digitally disconnecting in the evenings or some other time of day that shows your loved ones that you're in the moment? Is it just listening to what their day is like? Is it taking time to show you care in some way? I mean, just think about, those are just thought starters. How do you show up for your loved ones in the best way? Better yet, what is it that your loved ones need that you play a huge part in? Because when we don't do those things, we feel pretty bad about ourselves, right? So showing up for your loved ones, whatever that is, Lisa, could be, I know you cook your awesome turkey white bean chili soup. Maybe that's it. Whatever it is, but how do you show up best for your loved ones? Once you do that, then the third question is, how do you lead and work well with others, right? If you've taken responsibility with question one, with how you show up best for yourself, and let me tell you, you have to come before everybody else. It's just plain as day. And then if the second thing is you show up well for the people you love, now how do you lead and work alongside others, your peers, your subordinates, your industry colleagues, your board members, your owner, whatever, whoever it is? How do you do that? Do you feel that you're anxious? Think about how you kick off your meetings. Are you always talking about the challenges or what's going wrong? You're taking a moment to literally find, in some instances, something to talk about that's positive. How do you respect people's time off? Do you? Think about this. We all know we have to. We sprint to get ready for the holiday that we go to take, and then we go to take the holiday, and everyone's bugging the hell out of us. And then we come back and we need a holiday from the holiday we didn't take. There's all of this. Let's ask ourselves: do you respect people's paid time off? If you give it to them, are you respecting it? How do you manage your calendar? Are you going from meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting? Or are you giving yourself maybe 10-minute breaks or 15-minute breaks in between, or a break in the middle of the day? How do you communicate? Look at your emails, look at your texts. Are you just running after someone, or you take a moment to ask how they are? Check in. Did they have a good weekend? Oh, they just got back from vacation. How was it? Love to see some pictures. How do you show that you care? And so these things for people that you work with are really important. And so now that we've asked how we care for ourselves, how we show up for people that we love, how we show up with people that we lead and work alongside, then the fourth question is, how do you lead well-being in your organization? How do you lead with love in your organization or your community? It could be your church, could be whatever. Do you include it in your vision of success? Do you attend well-being related activities? Do you donate some of your time to an organization that's important to you? Do you integrate wellness and somehow into your workplace practices, or better yet, your culture? What's in the way of question 1, 2, 3, 4? If we're being honest with ourselves, what's in the way of these things, of us going like we want them to? And hopefully just some things come to mind. Let me tell you, it's the first thing that instinctually comes to mind is usually the thing that needs the most work. This is about us. But if you really want to lead well with love in 2021, every so often you have to sit down with that uncomfortable proverbial mirror and ask yourself these questions. And then I do this literally, you guys. I started doing this. We created this exercise a year ago, and now I do it probably every quarter, honestly. It's time to ultimately recommit to your well-being so that you can lead well with love in 2021 and beyond. And so the worksheet that Lisa's going to share with you, that I think she'll break people up into groups, is if you take those things that you wrote down, and maybe you just share the things you wrote down in this breakout, and maybe you take this and you print it out, and just like we're in grade school, make this a written exercise for you, maybe at the end of the day or sometime this week, that you really ask yourself, what are you willing to commit to for yourself so that you show up the best for yourself? What are you willing to do to show up the best you can for the people that you love? What about the people you lead and work with, your organization and community? And listen, guys, don't go and get 10 things like you do for a New Year's resolution. Even if you pick one of these things to focus on. My recommendation is, this is what I do. I ask myself those questions. I usually pick 1 or 2 things for every single category. And then I literally focus on like 1 or 2 things that I'm like, this is the thing I need to fix first. And then I'm going to come back and deal with this next quarter. It sounds so silly. And I know it sounds so juvenile in the world that we're living in today, but doing the self-audit is the single most important thing for you to do to be able to lead well with love in 2021, and to make use of those tips and those love lessons that I gave you. This is where it's at. So I'm going to leave this with you. Lisa, I'm going to pass the baton back to you all. I'm going to stop sharing. And that little worksheet, we're going to give you as a parting gift from me and friends here at Kyricos and Associates. But the conversation that you guys can have in your breakouts is just sharing what came up for you maybe, and work on those commitments maybe over the next week or so. But that would be my recommendation.
Let's all show hands for Mia. Thank you so much for this. It was so great to have you and your time. So generous of you. We appreciate it.
You're welcome. Big hugs to all of you guys. I'm taking off, but thank you so much to the We Work Well team. Thank you, Lisa, for inviting me, and it's so good to see so many familiar faces. See you guys later.
Thanks, Mia.
Bye.
So as Mia